this workshop on regulatory barriers to competition in professional services. My name is Alain Desserre, and I'm the Deputy Director of the Policy Studies Branch in the Economics Department. So for today and tomorrow, we have, I believe, a very rich agenda. The sessions today will focus on the role of competition in professions with a look at the main drivers, and we'll also discuss evidence on the impact of regulatory constraints on services, the outcomes, prices, quality, and so on.
And now let's switch to the next speaker. This is Antonio Cappiello. He serves as senior economist for the Consiglio Nazionale del Notariato, which is the Italian Professional Association of Notaries, and is a member of the Italian Society of Economics and Demographics and Statistics. His presentation will provide a critical assessment of how regulatory indicators can provide useful information about market failure correction. So, Professor Cappiello, if you're here, feel free to share your screen.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Good morning to everybody. So first of all, as emphasized and underscored also in the footnote of a PMR report, civil law notaries represent a particular case inside the professional services because they are delegated by the state to provide a public service within the administration of the justice. So their particular function is also recognized by the European legislation, and notaries ensure the compliance with law and the credibility and certainty of public registers. So they can be seen in a certain way as ex-ante judges, because the notarial authentication ensures that the content of document complies with law and confers also probative and enforcement power. So in this context, let's say the pure competition mechanism could not be fully adaptable to this profession. That being said, in my presentation, I will focus on the PMR and its implication if applied to the notarial function. So I will use some data analysis and some logical framework. So to underline the risk of bias and the possible inconsistencies with the policy aim. So as underlined also by the keynote speaker, I want to show some proof of this. So I try now to share my presentation, just a second. So, a quick overview of the PMR context could help us to better follow the scheme of our reasoning. The intermediate input by professional is supposed to improve through competition. Competition that is supposed to produce good results unless market failure. PMR indicators measures entry barriers and conduct regulation and aim to push for the regulation in order to have more competition, lower costs, and better efficiency. Nevertheless, a correct assessment should also take into consideration the consequences in terms of public interest, consumer protection, and verify the consequences of the regulation. Therefore, we want to verify now if to less regulated notarial systems corresponds to lower cost and better quality and productivity. So to do this, I consider the homogeneous cluster of civil law notary countries. I want to show the correlation between the PMR level of regulation for notaries and this kind of indicators of the World Bank, let's say for the real estate transfer, let's say time, procedures, cost, and quality. So we note a slight negative slope between PMR and time to complete the process, number of procedures and costs, and a positive slope between PMR and quality of the real estate transfer. This means that at increasing of regulation in the notarial sectors, countries have a lower number of procedures that are completed in a less time and with higher quality. Therefore, they are more productive and more efficient. So the logic of PMR in this case is like the opposite: more regulated, more quality, lower costs. As concerns costs, as against all stereotypes, we can see that at the increasing of regulation, we have lower costs. This can be seen also if we split the cluster I was talking about in 3 subclusters, according to the final cost of the real estate transaction. We could note the inverse correlation between cost and regulation that is following a defined pattern, especially in the circled units that are underlined in each subgroup. So in order to have a comparison with the countries not adopting civil law notaries, we can aggregate their data as concerned real estate and transfer, let's say real estate transfers and compare with countries adopting notaries in real estate transaction. So this exercise, you can see in the histograms that the gray shapes, it's countries not adopting notaries. So the comparison is in favor of notaries in each sector as concerns cost as well, procedures and time. As concerned the anti-money laundering compliance, that is an important requirement for legal professionals. So we can note a positive trend of correlation also with FATF anti-money laundering standards. So in order to have a comparison with countries that do not adopt notaries, we did the same exercise. So we aggregate the score and we can see that the comparison is still in favor of countries adopting civil law notaries. Finally, some considerations on the role of the professional bodies. OECD product market regulation aims to abolish every barrier to free competition for every sector affecting business and trade, including professions. So the OECD report 2014 suggests to abolish chamber membership and reduce exclusive right. On the other side, the ML guides, so anti-money laundering guides of the main international organizations, suggest to improve the control of self-regulatory bodies for professions in order to prevent the abuse in the professional sectors and better monitor the anti-money laundering procedures. So if we want to protect a country system, we may therefore need to reconsider the strategy based on pure competition and uncontrolled deregulation. Therefore, coming back to our initial scheme, so what context? The context is the analysis of professionals, why we analyze it to improve benefits for the consumers and the economic system, how through competition. So after empirically verifying some correlations, we can adjust, refine the criteria for measuring the impact of regulation on the consumer in terms of cost, quality, efficiency, and legal protection, which is a positive externality. In case the empirical results show some inconsistency with our objective, we may need to reconsider the criteria of our scheme according to the specific analyzed sector. So notaries, as I said before, as also underlined by the European legislation, can be considered as ex-ante judges as concerns the nature of their services. So this must be necessarily highly regulated in order to ensure the correct administration of the justice. That's why in order to answer to Professor Berkman, he noticed that inside the professionals, notarial had a level of regulation from 3.3 to 5.6. This is quite normal according to the reason we had before, also empirically verified. So therefore, the PMR assessment scheme may have less adaptability to professions who are part of the administration of the justice. So I was very quick because you told me to be very fast. I concluded. Thank you very much. It was really a privilege talking to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Cappiello.
Some trends in professions, particularly in the law profession, and that some of those changes may ultimately be for the better and can create some efficiencies that can be realized by consumers.
Work my mic again. Thank you so very much for your comment, which also somehow links to the innovation topics that we discussed before, which was forced innovation because of COVID, but still work to deliver some results. So, yeah. Dr. Cappiello, do you want to add a reflection?
Yes, so just to reply to your question, when you said that it's not necessarily true when you say no rules are good and a lot of regulation is positive. I agree with you. You just said that you want to show what is the best practice, right? So for notary professions, we could see that the starting point is higher, but we should consider that in the same group, you analyzed civil law notaries and public notaries. For instance, you analyzed as notaries also Sweden, United States, and other countries like Israel, for example. So
we actually do not calculate them as notaries unless they are independent professionals. If they work as civil servants or if they are lawyers with some specific activities, they are not included in the PMR.
No, I can assure you that. I can assure you, if you look at the table, you analyzed, let's say, different kind of systems and labeled like notaries. So this is why Professor Berkman find this gap. According to it, we can after verify, but this is not maybe the point. The point when you say, okay, we can distinguish what is a good regulation, what is a bad regulation. I don't say that now the actual picture is that notaries, they have the best regulation in the world and this is optimal. But just say that this kind of scheme is measuring something in a way that maybe we risk to have, let's say, a race to the bottom. Because if you look only at the entry barriers, for instance, I just try to find what are the entry barriers: exclusive rights, examination, member of professional organization, years of education as undergraduate. So the more you do, the score is higher. If we want to find this optimal good standard that you mentioned, the only thing would take 0 is less than 3 years of undergraduate education. This means that we want to have a race to the bottom also as university background. This is kind of a paradox, according to me. So this is what I want to underline. If the notaries are part of the administration of justice, they have to be, let's say, within certain guarantee as cultural background, as deontological rules, and so on.
Similar to what happens in lawyer professions or in other professions. Yeah.
Also, thank you. Since the analysis of Professor Verboven was showing that now it's not moment to open the entry, this is the best answer because it's empirical. But also theoretically, let's say there is a rationale behind the programmed number of notaries. And anyway, this is fixed by the Ministry of Justice according to some parameters like demographic. Before was also economic, now it's basically on a demographic. So it should be also considered that if you float markets with too many notaries, let's say this profession would be less appealing. Also, this is another reason. So the quality, as Professor Verboven just stressed, could be lowered by this overloaded market.
We have a very nice question, and I will just take one from the public, which is again for Dr. Cappiello, and he asked about the potential reason for better outcomes service provided provided by notaries in more regulated countries. Can it be due it can be due to the regulation per se, but must relate to specific feature or requirements of the regulatory framework. So not more about the general level, but to specific feature. Any thoughts about that?
Yes, if I understood the question, you would like to say that maybe it's not only because notaries are highly regulated, but because all the country system has a good regulatory framework. I agree with him. Maybe it's both. I don't have answer because I didn't check and cross data in this sense, but probably is right because notary can work only if all the administration system is working. So if they have good infrastructures for public registers, so notary can ensure the credibility of this information, and the system working well is helping notary. So they help each other, the two systems, I think so.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much for clarifying this, and thank you also for all the participants for of this session, of the other session, and for our participants as an audience. It has been a very fruitful discussion. I hope it's a start of better stakeholder engagement on somebody discussed, or a better, deeper discussion with academics and practitioners and experts of the field. Thank you so very much, and see you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Looking into someone wants to just know if notaries are the most protected of all professions, but I think that's kind of a moot point depending on your jurisdictions. But it's also, I think we heard yesterday that notaries have a very particular role to play in society, especially in the what's called the Latin law countries. And that's why they tend to have a different status. As we will see this afternoon, there are different ways of addressing what notaries can do, as has been done in England and Wales, where they have opened up. It used to be solicitors exclusively dealing with house purchases, but I think this is changing, as Christopher might be able to confirm. So unfortunately, we are out of time, but I would like to thank all our speakers and panelists